All right. Why don't we get started? My name's Patrick Thornham. I'm the marketing manager for the zyBooks platform, and I'll cover some basic stuff really quickly. We're going to use the chat for questions and things to start. So if you guys don't mind just testing, make sure that that's available and working. Sometimes I think I have it turned on and it's not. So if, there we go. Perfect. So put your questions in there. There's enough of us to be able to field these, and I have a feeling there will be some good questions coming in. I also wanted to quickly show the page that's going to be coming to you after the webinar. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly, and then I'll let it go from there. So after the webinar, we'll send a link to this as well. We have a landing page for the project, and there, if you haven't already, there's an application. If you wanted to join the beta after seeing this, just fill out this application. We'll get notified, and within a couple of days, we'll let you guys know if we're turning it on. There's probably a good chance, but we just want to make sure what our volume is and things like that. And I just wanted to show that. So hold on after the webinar, and that will pop up for you. And finally, I just want to introduce who's on the call. So we have Joe Mazzone and Curtis Hull are going to be presenting today. And I wanted to pass that off to them, and Curtis will get you started. Curtis, I'll give it to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Patrick. Yeah. Hello, everybody. We're super excited to share some of these advanced zyLabs capabilities with you today, and I'm gonna pass it to Joe shortly. But I just kind of wanted to give some history and some context for this call and for the webinar. So to put it simply, we've heard lots of requests around what I would classify as advanced zyLabs capabilities for a number of years now, right? So I've got a little list on my other screen here. Things like paired programming and group projects, support for bigger labs with, maybe a more first-party sort of file tree, more language support, code playback. It would be nice to see more about the progression of how a student is working through their lab. Things like better GitHub integration, better debugging tools, and even, all that sort of culminates in the idea of having the capability, if you wanted to have a more advanced IDE native to the zyBook and native to the experience that your students are using in the browser, right? So what might that look like? Having Visual Studio Code available in a zyBook, so that you could work on more advanced labs. You could work on standard labs with a debugger. You could use some of those awesome extensions and things for the code that your students are writing. And really the benefit of that is that students have a common input window for some of these more advanced capabilities. I think we all know it's difficult to set up an IDE on a student's computer and make sure that's consistent across every environment. How do you submit that work? How do you grade that work? So anyways, all that to say, I'm super excited to be talking about this today, and I'm super excited to hand it off to Joe in a moment here to talk about our work with the Coding Rooms team. So we recently acquired Coding Rooms, who they've built a just world-class in-browser IDE experience, which supports natively many of those things that I was just talking about. And through this, new partnership and working together, we're excited to bring these features to the zyBook. So over the last couple of months, me and Joe and Sasha as well, and our teams, we've been working on bringing these capabilities native to the zyBook. And we're excited to sort of bring that to you in a beta format today. So with that, Joe, I will kick it off to you, and we can start to dig into what does all of that actually look like.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. Let me share my screen here. And I'm just going to pop open the chat too, just to have some awareness of that. But over on my screen, you'll see a zybook. Actually, this one's full of examples. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. It's you know, full of examples. Actually, if you are we accept you into the beta program, you'll get this kind of book full of examples here. But how to get started with the new advanced zyLabs is actually, this might be the thing that trips some people up once you get accepted. Your instinct would probably go to add a zyLab. But it's all in creating a new section, an instructor created kind of section here. And then you'll see this advanced zyLab button that will let you add that resource. And really this idea, the reason why we have it this way is we're kind of detaching the zyLab from having to be its own section and allowing it to be more flexible in other areas. Does that mean that, you know, you wouldn't see it as its own sections in your zybook? No, you probably will kind of see it the same way in the semesters to come. But this is kind of adding more flexibility. So especially as you're in this beta and you're going to use this, you'll find it there. Once you click to add an advanced zyLab, it's going to generate a resource for this advanced zyLab. And it loads our Coding Rooms IDE right in the zybook. And so what you see at first, as you, the instructor, are creating a lab here with us, is a language selector. And we have a number of different configurations on the IDE that let you use kind of different setups. So you can see here from C to C++ to C#, Django web apps. We even have things like Greenfoot, which is kind of its own application running on there. And some other different setups with some different things. We even have like MySQL, LAMP server, and we're looking to expand this library and even support a number of different zybook offerings. So we've developed some great ways to help us with this. If I was to select Python, then let's say, you know, you may have different versions of languages that you can then select, and of course some different IDEs that you can choose from. Once you've set up your kind of language selection, it will create your environment. It'll give you some boilerplate code. For instance, here we have you know, a simple hello world program with Python. And when you click run, starts up the environment, and you can see we have an interactive console with our output here. That first run kind of starts up the virtual environment. And so that takes a little bit longer, but after that, once you have this interactive terminal running, everything's available. This is a full Linux terminal that you have access to here. So I can you know, run commands and do a number of different things here, just like if you were developing locally on an IDE. This that we're, as an instructor, creating is what we refer to as the template. So if you were to launch one of these labs to start off, you're creating the actual setup for the lab, the files, the code you want students to start off with here in the template area, so that once students open up the lab, they would get to see all those things. We had a request to see VS Code quickly, so we can do that. Some niceties, you know, as you select languages, of course, we'll be doing some better things to support specific books. But as you select certain languages, they'll show up at first. You can, you know, just click this to clear and see the entire list again. But typically, people are just working with a couple languages, so we'll kind of show those as recently selected, make it easier for you to find those selections. Once we have VS Code, we can start up the instance. And we're going to get native VS Code embedded right here in our browser. Same idea of configuring the template. I can add some files, things like that. It's actually supported by the Coding Rooms IDE still. And there's actually a button to switch over to the Coding Rooms IDE. But so all the same wonderful things that I'm going to showcase when I talk more details about the kind of IDE technology that we have here, that also works, and all that data is stored even when you're using VS Code or another professional IDE in the browser. But you can see we have Visual Studio Code here. We do add an extension to VS Code to give this little simple run button similar to our IDE. So if you click that, for instance, it runs your code, and we can see we have that here. Of course, you could always go over and open up the terminal and just type in there. TY, and so students can interact with it that way. This is, native web version of VS Code rendered here in the browser. We do have some other offerings if you start playing around with things that are actually desktop versions of IDEs and other programs that run in the desktop environment. I'll kind of showcase that in a second too. If you're like, desktop, what are you talking about? You'll see some of the other cool capabilities. But this is actual VS Code here. So GitHub capabilities, the debugger, extensions that are available. All those things you can have set up here. And we do have some help documents in our help center. And some of them are about how to configure VS Code and some stuff like that too, to get it so that when students open it, they'll have certain configurations and setups of yours. So we have some documentation on that. So what I wanted to show off here is that we support a full typical kind of file tree, a project structure of folders and files in this environment. So I can create another Python file very easily, have that here, and notice now I'm working in multiple files. And we've made it really easy too, if you have a workspace like this with multiple files, to allow students to easily run those files. So if you click the run button, it's going to run what we call the default file. But there's this drop down that lets you select any file, and it will run the file that you select here. These are part of some of the settings that you can set when setting up the workspace. What is the default file? That's also the first file that will open for the students. We have some run commands that we use by default, depending on the language setting that you have. However, if you want this run button to do something else, you have particular, things you want to happen, that's very possible to change. You can identify a custom command, type that in, do those things. We have some questions about supporting other text files, CSV files, maybe image files, audio files. Yes, all those things are supported. And yes, you can make folders. So here's a folder. And I'm going to put this Python file in that folder. And I can actually still run that file even though it's in that folder. See, it's no longer in my root directory here. And there's questions about saving work. Yes, everything auto saves. So you can see this little indicator over here. Watch while I type. See, it's detecting my changes, and then it's gonna persist some changes. Everything kind of is saves in real time, and everything saves. We keep track keystroke for keystroke what's happening. So we have this feature called playback history. I'll show it again. But keystroke for keystroke, you can see who typed what in this environment for the different files also. We keep track of those events when new folders are created, when new files are created. We're looking to really leverage this data to flag all kinds of things in the future. But as you can see, we're keeping track of a lot of stuff in this workspace. But as students work, it will save the changes to their files. Everything that persists is what would show up here in this files area. We call that directory, if you look at it on the machine user code. Someone asked about, I assume, execution's server side. Yep. So what's happening here is when you start up kind of using this IDE and actually you have an actual machine, we have a container, a Linux container. It's being run. We can actually check out the desktop. We can open up like a file manager and walk around that thing, check it out. And we've got a couple improvements in the way that we're managing those things coming out soon and making it so you can customize the environment a lot easier. So there's some really cool things coming out in the coming months. We have lots of things planned, as you can imagine. So everything's done here. And of course, on our side in there. So when they're running a command, it's running on this Linux container that they have access to. So no compute on the student side. This means students using Chromebooks, iPads. Most of the time, that's not a big issue at university. But let's say a student has the cheapest device possible, of those things. Everything should still work fine. Yep, every student has their own container as they're working. It's not the same container every time or anything like that. We recycle these things and they start it up. So it's just to give them the environment to run their code. Students have their own separate workspace with their own separate files, things like that. They can't, get into another student's files or any of those things. So what we also have here up at the top, and then I'm going to dig into some of the more, fancy features and check out some cool projects and stuff like that also. But I want to just go over some other basics quickly. Is at the top, you'll see these other tabs. And again, we're still in the mode of where we would design a lab, right? We're setting it up for students to work. And when I click Test Bench, this is where I could create the automated tests. And then we also have Model Solution. This is where you can store your solution. And this is really great for when you're designing tests, right? You can run your tests against your solution, make sure all of them are passing. We'll also be working on ways right now. There's no way to show the student the solution, but we'll be working on adding that. And we're working on kind of, adding all of those features in full parity with current zyLabs. But when you click Create a New Test, some of these should feel familiar if you've designed your own zyLabs before. But of course, we can have input-output comparisons. We can assign how many points this is worth. We can hide, the actual test details from the student, so they only see what they got, if they got it right or wrong. And then we have some different compare methods, and we're looking to expand this to give it full parity with current zyLabs. But how you want to compare the output, provide lines of input, the expected output of the student's code. So we have those kind of output tests. We also have unit tests. And we have unit tests in a number of popular unit testing frameworks. JUnit for Java, Python unit test for JavaScript, and your web dev stuff, you have Jest and Jasmine. C++, we have Google Test. Ruby, we have RSpec. C# we have NUnit. And for C, we have Check. And we're looking to expand this set even more. And one of the really cool things with kind of this new test bench setup that we have for designing tests, we also have a third option here, custom bash test. And so I just saw somebody in the comments say, hey, what about PyTest? Well, to be honest with you, if you want to do anything that maybe we don't fully support or we don't show in that normal unit test dropdown, we have the custom bash script test where you can do what you want. So PyTest is installed on our Python image, and you can write your own bash script to actually run a PyTest and evaluate how you want, how you want to evaluate if students pass or not. So if there's ever anything that we don't, support up front, you can technically kind of build this yourself. You can add additional files that you bundle with the test, upload files, import what you need. So provide your Python, PyTest file, and be able to do some things like that. And then the model solution, when you're ready to create it, it's a copy the template. This is kind of a nicety if you're building the model solution straight here. We understand that most of the time people have some model solution maybe locally on their computer that you're going to upload. Our file tree does support uploads, downloads, as well as creating, new files and folders there. But we give that extra step of creating the model solution so you can get whatever you set up in the template and kind of build off of that. And of course, you can run the tests, from the model. You can run the tests from here in the test bench. And if you're on the template, you can run the tests on the template, all available kind of there while you're building the lab. So let us check out some other things. So I mentioned the possibility of two solutions. We only have one area to put a model solution, but that doesn't prevent you from adding multiple files in that area if you want to store some other things. So you could do stuff like that. Of course, it becomes a little bit more tricky when kind of running the tests against them, because usually your test would kind of check for one file to import it, or run a input-output test against one file. But you can store whatever you want there in the model solution workspace. I've seen other people, what they'll do is they'll actually keep multiple solutions kind of and just comment out some in one file, so they can uncomment out the multiple lines and try different things. So it really depends. So let's look at some Python example labs. So I'll go into actually edit mode here. And we can check out, this is actually a familiar lab from, a zyBook, little Mad Lib lab, learning input. And so what would it look like in this new advanced labs? Well, you see, we get our template that students get, tells them, hey, type your code here. We have a test bench that has our compare output tests with the different assigned points. So you can see here the lines of input, run the code. When we give these lines of input, this is what the output should be. And then the model solution. Let's look at something a little bit more advanced. Here we have Pygame example. Pygame is a very popular Python library to develop games and GUIs, graphics. And this works in this environment. So, typically with, let's say, an online IDE environment, something like current zyLabs, well, where am I supposed to see, my graphic output? Where am I supposed to play my game? Well, here, we're able to support image files in a folder. Of course, we got the Python file, and we can also support an MP3 file, audio files. We can run the code, open up the desktop. And here's the game. We have controls so you can turn the audio on and actually listen to the audio of the game. We can go full screen on the desktop here to make it a little bit bigger. You can even open up the desktop in a new tab if you want to get that really large experience for it. So students can have their desktop kind of ready, and these sync. So I can have it open over here, edit my code, go back, play my game again. So let me run my game again. I can switch over and I can start playing. So you have that available. Same thing, a little, turtle program here to create a drawing. What's great about this example too is this has a REPL with it after, so you can kind of control the turtle. So with our kind of new turtle implementation, so we had it draw something over here, and then I can say like turtle dot right. It turns again, and then it's FD turtle dot forward. 100 pixels. You can see it went forward and stuff like that. Might be a little tough, but we support Tkinter, Kiwi. I think I saw that on our list recently, but yeah, we support a number of different libraries. And as I said, we're really looking to be able to support a number of different packages and allow you to kind of have some package requests and add be able to add that onto your environment. So that particular Python package is available to your students when you configure the template. We're really deep into that work now, and hopefully we'll be able to have that soon to anybody who's beta testing. Where this is really, really great is, actually, I was going to do it on the Pygame one. If I come down and my students are working on this Pygame example, right? And they're working, and maybe I want to check in on my students. We have some student activity here. And when you open up your student, I can see, oh, this student, Jack, he's struggling. He hasn't gotten the points yet for the auto grading for this assignment. I can actually open up Jack's workspace live. What this means is if Jack's working, we can actually work together live. This is awesome for office hours or something like that where you want to work with the student. And so here's Jack on the right-hand side. And Jack's working along, and Jack's running his code. And when Jack runs his code, I'm going to actually see that his code's running also. So notice the console sync. This is live collaborative environment between you and the students. And we're looking to bring this kind of live collaborative environment to multiple students to maybe do group work and other things in the future, pair programming. I can open up the desktop, check out what's going on. Even the desktop's collaborative. So as I, the teacher, move around this window, you're going to see it moves on the students. As I, the teacher, stop the student's code and run something in the console, you can see it updates on the students also. As the student's typing and changing something in their code, I can see their cursor just like a Google Doc and where they're typing. Same with the playback history. I can actually see who typed what in these events and who did what. So I can see if maybe, one of my TAs went in and helped a student, or I accidentally messed up the student's code. Or I can see the logical process that they went about solving this problem. Did they all of a sudden just copy and paste in a bunch of stuff and they just magically had the right solution? Did they, develop it just from the top all the way to the bottom perfectly, typing all the characters? That looks like cheating too. And how fast they solved it, and a number of really great things. So where some of this is really, really advantageous is especially for things we weren't able to offer before, like C#. So we saw a number of these kind of environments set up. Let's come down to like here we go, a WinForms application. So areas where current zyLabs doesn't support things like C#, we're able to now offer that. So we have a number of different environments that are available. What's cool about this is actually a desktop GUI that runs a WinForms application. So I can actually, come in and Let's compile and run this. And you can see I can actually start up an application here, even with Visual Studio Code and C#. Some really great things. Opportunities we haven't had before is things in like our web development books. So web programming. This environment is really, really great for web programming. Students are able to work on their code and see their web page in real time update. Let's do this one because it actually has something to look at. So, I'm able to actually see my web page as I'm editing it and have it update in real time. You can see we have some nice autocomplete capabilities here too. So their web page updates. We actually host the web page. So I can open it in another tab. While the student's working on this, they actually have a URL for their web page. This allows them, maybe if you're doing class time, people sharing web pages they built, something like that, they can actually share them out. Check it out. Things like a full JavaScript game. Again, right here in a preview, they can open it in a new tab, see it full, they can play it, all that great stuff. Even full React apps work in this environment. Again, I see some people asking about, different versions. We're working on, with that kind of custom package support and things that I was just talking about, we're working on being able to very easily support different versions of Python, different versions of Java. Java right now, we do have 8, 11, and 17 available. Python, it's just 3, I think it's 3.9 we have, but we'll be able to have other versions of Python available very easily. So something that's really cool too, we worked on a way that if a local host link shows up, you click on it, we automatically convert that to the URL to access that kind of web app, which is really great. So we convert it to the URL that allows you to access on that particular port. So yes, you can spin up servers. We have people, have students generate Java docs, and then they can start up a little server to actually serve the Java doc and view those pages, all kinds of things. Yes, we support Jest. We even support Jest on the auto grader, so you can use it to evaluate student code. Let's take a peek at the data science stuff. So of course, we have different libraries that help support data science. We're looking to expand this set, especially to support the data science zyBooks from the model solutions for these. So you can see we have SciPy here. Using my numpad, don't have numlock on. Doesn't say 110. And so we can have all that work. We even have the ability to have Jupyter Notebooks. We talked about, yes, Visual Studio Code, but we have other IDEs that we're looking to support. So we have Jupyter Notebook support. We also have R Studio support. And we're looking to expand that in the future also. So you can open up a Jupyter Notebook. Actually, let's take a look at something like this one. It's a little more interesting. So we have TensorFlow. And so you can have your Jupyter Notebook. We have a CSV file with this. We have a model that it ends up generating and puts into this folder. So students can open up the notebook. Jupyter Notebook's very good about having some maybe instructions or instructional pieces or information, in the different cells too with Markdown. So you can technically do that. See, we have pandas here, and so we're able to run the cells. Goes through, does some things with the data. So we can do all that still, and again, using Jupyter Notebook now, not using just the regular IDE that we have available. And the kind of last showcase, let's talk about some of the database stuff. I see that was kind of one of the last questions we had in here. And so if you look, we have LAMP, MySQL, we have SQLite available. And so we do have some of these as examples for you to be able to check out. And so, you can, have a SQL script, run it, be able to do things. And we're definitely looking to improve the databases support. That's on, one of the top things on my list for us to look at, and what that will look like in our databases zyBook. But, even with other languages, and especially we're going to let you kind of mix and match this stuff a little bit more with the way that we're supporting those custom packages that I was talking about. For instance, we have a MySQL with Python set up here. So you can use MySQL and Python together. For SQLite, we also have this this viewer that makes it really easy for, if you're doing some introductory stuff, you want students to just check out tables, maybe write some small queries and do some other things. We have some people that really like this experience. So you just kind of can dig around here. We also support this with, just as a little embed, so that students can still write the scripts here and have that and still be able to support it. So you can check out the content in the table, they can write a query, do some things. So we have a little viewer as a GUI to check out the table and stuff. We also have on some of them some applications that you can use. So for instance, on the MySQL, I believe on SQLite, also, if you open the desktop, you can use dbeaver right on the desktop as an application to do some things with the database also, and some things like that. So we're looking to be able to add more of those things, be able to allow you to use the tools you want to use. So a lot of that customization of the environment, custom package support has been really important work to us, because we want to kind of hit the ground running with allowing you to set up the environment the way you want. We want to bring the tools that you use in your classroom and want to use in your classroom right to your zyBook. And that's important to us. So I will, at this time, I'll leave my screen share up just so we can easily jump to things and kind of showcase some stuff, but we'll mainly open it up for some questions. Curtis, I don't know if you have any thoughts you kind of want to say right now, maybe before or as people are thinking about some questions.
Yeah, definitely. I just kind of want to reinforce a couple of the points that you said there, Joe. We're really invested in bringing technologies that we know are being used outside of the zyBook into the zyBook, right? So like I was mentioning earlier, yeah, it's difficult to keep a Visual Studio Code instance, consistent across people's different computers and different environments and computers that have different capabilities, right? So imagine a world where all of that can be housed inside of the zyBook, and you can standardize, as Joe was showing, you can standardize an environment, you can standardize your template code, you can standardize your auto grading, and then essentially give students the same starter environment, and the only requirement on them is that they have a tool to access the zybook. Everything's run in a virtual machine on our end, and it really takes the pressure off of you as the instructor to help students get their environment set up, and it takes the pressure off of the student to go through some of that setup as well. So that's something personally I'm super excited about. I've been seeing another thing I wanted to talk about is I've been seeing a lot of questions in the chat here about existing zyLabs content. So won't go into too much detail here because we're still strategizing for the fall, but I'll say the plan is for the fall. This, as you can imagine, this gives us a lot of capability on our authoring side. As Joe showed, there's capability now for web programming and your websites to run live and for your changes to be reflected live, which was not possible in zyBooks, in zyLabs before. So that's possible. It's possible for us to support new languages that we haven't supported before, like C#. And those are just 2 points. As you can imagine, there's potentially infinite things you can do on a virtual machine like this. So what does that mean for the fall? It means that we're working with our authoring teams, and we're working with our content team to see, hey, what are the new opportunities that this sort of lab structure opens up for us on the zyBooks maintained lab side. But in the near term, it allows you to potentially take existing zyLabs and use them in this new viewer, right? So like I said, I don't want to go into too much detail here because we're still internally strategizing, but the plan is to provide a way for you to convert existing zyLabs into one of these views. And not that we want to force you into doing that, because we really believe that there's a lot of value in that simplistic zyLabs view now, that simple view that's really focused on the programming. But we know that there's desire to do some more advanced things, to get students used to Visual Studio Code, to enable a debugger, situations like that. So for the fall, we're working on a converter, and that will be baked in a very natural way. And I'll say that we only plan on that getting more natural and more friendly from a user experience perspective as we continue down this path. So yeah, but thanks, Joe. I think that was a great intro into some of the awesome new capabilities that we're really excited about.
So we do have some questions. I know Sasha was doing well answering some.
I can speak really quick to some logistics. If you, in the beta, this question came across email today, we'll give you an evaluation copy of exactly what Joe was showing. That will be put in your library to play around with, but we will also make it live if you're accepted in the beta in any of the books that you want. So I had some people today say, I want it in these 2 books, but not this one. So it would be in both places, which sort of helps you play around without worrying too much about it affecting your course.
Just going through the questions list here, I'm seeing another question around time windows and different sections for advanced zyLabs in the same way that you can currently set time windows for existing zyLabs. So as Joe mentioned in a couple of different parts of his presentation, we're really focused on bringing as much parity as we can between some of these new experiences and existing zyLabs. So we really don't want this to be thought of as a completely different service. Oh, the advanced zyLabs and the not advanced zyLabs. We don't want it to be thought of in that way. We want it to be thought of in that we're bringing value to the zyLabs platform here and adding new capabilities with potentially new ways to go look into a lab, right? So you could use the traditional zyLabs experience. You could use the new coding rooms IDE. you could use the VS Code IDE to look into a lab. And naturally, part of that is supporting existing zyLabs features that that don't currently exist in coding rooms. And one of them is time windows and availability controls, which you're familiar with now from existing zyLabs. So one of the things that Joe first mentioned in his demo is that, and this in itself is an exciting new feature. We've been asked for a long time to have lab activities in these create section workflows, right? So allow me to put a lab in with other kinds of content. If I want to have a video above a lab, let me do that. If I want to have two labs in the same section that maybe build off of each other, let me do that, right? And so we're really excited to bring that capability. And we're talking with the team about having availability controls in a sort of a common service that could apply to the section. So again, I know there's a lot of points here which we're going to take back to the team and continue to iterate on. But the plan is for us initially to bring those availability controls to the section level, so that all of the labs, potentially even all of the other resources that you had contained inside of that section that you created, or maybe even a section that you didn't create, could all be controlled by that section level availability. So yeah, we're looking to add a lot of flexibility there, not only for these new kinds of resources or new kinds of labs, but other kinds of content that might be in your section as well. I see another piece of feedback here around, is there any roadmap to include some sort of moderated feedback from AI chats to assist student learning? So I'm sure a lot of people on this call are familiar with Frank Vahid's work and research around integrity. And of course, these days, things like ChatGPT, other AI chatbots, big part of that, right? Patrick, maybe you want to speak to this a little bit. I know we've got another beta running around some tools to help look into that sort of information. Are students using, chatbots or other tools to help do their programs? And yes, longer term, we do want to incorporate the ability to look into labs that you're working on here. We want you to be able to look at those through some of the new integrity work that's being developed as part of that.
Yeah, actually, in Frank, there's two pieces to that. The assisting students part, I know he talks a lot about that, trying to meet students when they're having their most difficulty, and I'm sure this isn't new to any of you. It's often after 10:30 p.m. the night before it's due that students will need help, and sometimes they can't get it. So that example is a really good one. But on the flip side of that is Frank is actually just getting ready to release a white paper on, he had students run all of the labs that he had for a term with 107 students, I think, and post the data that they were able to capture in this other tool to see if they could, what kinds of results they got. And it's pretty interesting stuff there too. So I can point you to a different direction, but we're definitely working on that. And the student coding behavior tool that's attached to labs, which down the line we also want to have integrate with this as well, really helps get some insight into what's going on in students coding.
On that topic, though, I just want to highlight again, and Joe, I know you showed it towards the beginning of the demo, but I just want to highlight again some of the conversations we've been having around the code playback functionality. So this is new to zyLabs as well. I think a lot of us here are familiar with and hopefully know and love the coding trail functionality that exists in zyLabs right now. So you can kind of think of this as the next generation of coding trails, where not only do we want you to be able to know what the student has, created as part of their lab, but we also want you to be able to look through that whole history And so like Joe was just showing there, you can flip through the code playback, see who did what in their lab, see the progression of files that have been created, folders that have been created, that sort of thing. And I'll let you in on a little of our roadmap here that we're hoping to bring advanced capabilities here for detecting students working in a way that maybe is not, we want to be able to detect things that might go against integrity rules at your school, right? So if a student is, for example, copying a huge section of code and pasting it into their program here, if we're tracking every keystroke, every change in the file, that's something that maybe we could flag for you automatically, right? And we don't necessarily want for you to just have to flip through every single character of every student's code. We want to eventually get into providing those insights a little bit more upfront too. So that doesn't exist now, but that's something that we're working on in line with all this conversation of, you know, how do we teach students in a world where ChatGPT exists? How do we teach students in a world where some of these other sites exist where students are copying code and pasting it in? So we want to give you tools to run your course in a way that is full of integrity for students. See here, other questions. Joe, I'm seeing a number of questions around debugging. Maybe we could walk through a little bit of what debugging looks like in Visual Studio Code today.
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned in the chat by Sasha, we are looking at having code, tracing, stepping type of functionality in the regular ID experience. But as of, kind of today, going live with the beta, tomorrow with students or something like that for you all, you're going to want to lean on Visual Studio Code for that debugging experience. And so this would be, if you have experience with Visual Studio Code, this should be exactly the same as it is locally on your computer with how that would work. And I'm just going to do the cheesiest kind of thing here. So if I was to add some breakpoints, let's say for each of these, and, I can run the debugger. And now I can step through each line here. And so I notice the prints are happening as I click to walk through that. So you could do, those similar things, have assignments where students are learning about how to use the debugger and then actually use it here. We're hoping to, with the experience that we'll bring to the regular IDE, that you saw, kind of our coding rooms ID we mentioned, will be a simpler experience. We want to bring something really simple, easy for students to kind of get their code and have it just walk through, do some small visualization of the variables that they have, and also step through and see the output, stuff like that. So again, as of today, the debugging functionality is limited to VS Code or any of the other, professional IDs we support. Our regular ID we're looking to add.
I'm seeing a number of other questions in the chat around cost to the student, which is an excellent question. So I'll say the way that we're handling this as a team is, we're really focused on bringing in extra value to the zyLabs platform, right? So I've mentioned this in a couple of different ways. I said longer term, we don't want to be thinking of this as a new product, an add-on that you have to add into your book. we want to think of this as additional capability for the zyLabs platform. Joe's been, at the beginning, I discussed some of the capabilities that I know we've had feature requests for years around things like pair programming, even some of this debugging capability that Joe just showed. Those are feature requests that we've had for adding into zyLabs for years. And so we're really focused on bringing that additional value into the zyLabs platform that you're already using. So I'll say we don't imagine this as an add-on cost in addition to what you're paying for standard zyLabs.
I would say to Jason, we don't know the exact details yet. We don't have, even beyond absolute basic concept, any kind of mock-ups to show you. But as of right now, what we're looking at is the standard stepping and variables kind of window type of experiences is what we're focused on at this time. But if you enter into the beta, maybe start to experience that, we'd love to hear your feedback on what you'd love to see. And Dennis, Java is supported for the debugger in VS Code. I'd say the major programming languages, and be whatever ones VS Code can support. Sasha, I don't know if you know off the top of your head. The ones when people have asked it works with. So I haven't like tried anything obscure.
I think it works for all of the languages that we officially offer VS Code with. So if you have a VS Code option, that means we kind of have the extension ecosystem for it, and then typically that's the debugging configuration. All that will be bootstrapped into the extension ecosystem. And then one other point about the debugger, for sort of simpler debugger that we're planning, it will also likely be more of a playback than a real-time debugger. So like we'll run your code with a given input, and then we'll show we'll have the ability to step forward and step back, actually, and you'll be able to see the sort of stack and heap variables as well.
And we're at a time, I think, pretty much, but I'm going to be sending an email to everybody that was here, and I'll have a copy of the recording for you to access. And then again, I just posted the link where you can apply for the beta there, so you can access that. That will also be in the email, so if you forget, don't worry about it. And again, I'll reiterate, the way we'll set this up is tell us the book that you wanted in, and when we'll also be giving you the playground to mess around with so that you can see sort of the examples that Joe already had set up, which kind of saves some time and helps you see what's going on. And feel free to reach out to us if you have questions in the meantime, but thank you everybody for coming.
Thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully you can tell we're very excited about some of these new capabilities and getting you all access to this stuff very, very soon. So thanks for your interest, and can't wait to see what you build with some of these new tools.
Bye everyone.
Thanks everybody.